welcome to you all. Welcome to UN Women's office in the Pacific. It's a pleasure to have you all today. I want to say a particular thanks to Sharon and FemLink for having organized this launch, and of course to the Honorable Dr. Luveni for joining us today on the eve of Fiji Day. As the UN agency that leads the work of the United Nations on Women, Peace and Security, it's of course a real honor for us to be hosting today's launch of the Policy for Peace report produced by FemLink. Exactly 15 years ago, the Security Council of the United Nations, that's the body of the United Nations that really looks at the issues of conflicts, peace and security, issued a revolutionary resolution called Resolution 1325 on women, peace and security. And this was a really significant moment in history because until then, when we talked about war, the only way we talked about the role of women in war was as victims. I'm sure a lot of you have heard Angelina Jolie talking about rape being used as a weapon of war, right? This is all the idea, and this was for the longest time, we talked about war, it's like women at the forefront of war, they're the first victims, etc. But that was all. Now 15 years ago, the world finally admitted a truth that I think was well known to a lot of people, especially activists on the ground, grassroots organizations here in the Pacific, is that women have a much broader role to play. Women play a massive role in keeping the peace, preventing conflicts, in brokering peace deals when there are conflicts, and in recovery, reconstructions after conflicts take place. So this was quite radical for the UN. And to give you an example, just a couple of practical examples. If you think about peace negotiations, it used to be the case that you have a big war, women are victims, of course. You look at who's the negotiating table, delegations, there's only men. They're just talking, men, between themselves. And of course, when you look at the peace agreement, not one word about what happens to women. And that has very practical implications. So think about all the losses created by war, the death, the damage, and then systematically in the programs that developing partners of the UN would put together after a conflict for recovery. There'd be tons of programs to ensure that the former fighters, the people who committed the crimes, would get jobs, trainings, etc. Nothing for the women. So I think this was really, this is just a couple of practical examples to tell you about how important it was. So the reason we're here today together is that 15 years later, the United Nations has commissioned an independent global study to really look at what's happened in the last 15 years. What have we done? What's changed? What are the gaps and what can we do better? And as part of this report will be launched in a couple of weeks in New York at the security level by its author, Radhika Kumaraswamy, who's a very, very famous activist. And as part of that also, a number of research papers have been produced by UN Women will be released at the same time. Now, today, we're going to be launching the Pacific perspective on this report. FemLink has done a fantastic job at relooking and bringing together for this global report the Pacific perspective. What does it mean? And you're very lucky in the Pacific, we are, that we have a feminist organization that has been working on this issue for a very long time. FemLink, together with some of its partners, for instance, Voice Blanc Mary, I think in Solomon Islands, that I want to recognize, and also has been a part of UN Women. And FemLink has also in that capacity been convening the GPPAC, Pacific Secretariat, so a very important role. That role has not gone unnoticed. Sharon is very modest, but I can tell you on behalf of UN Women that we're very, very proud to count her as one of the members of a global civil society advisory group. But also, she was directly appointed as part of the advisory panel for this global report. I think it's also very, very fantastic for us UN Women to be launching this here in Fiji, as Fiji plays a key role in peacekeeping operations in the world and something that the country takes great pride in, and has also committed earlier this year in increasing the number of women soldiers in its peacekeeping forces. And we're even luckier that we're in a country where the Speaker of the House has really been listening to the call of the Secretary General when in 2014 he asked parliaments to be much more involved in women, peace and security issues and to raise awareness on women, peace and security issues. So, Honorable Speaker of the House, Dr. Luveni, it's a real pleasure and honor for us to have you with us today. And with those few words, I'd like to give you the floor to introduce the report.
I reckon this is very timely timely for me to participate in this, especially having just returned from New York about a month ago, attending speakers conference where all speakers globally attended. And in the presentations, many of the presentations, I kept hearing the UNCR 1325. And I had my Deputy Secretary General with me, and I said, listen, you guys are not listening. You guys are not saying UNCR 1325 as often as you should. So hopefully that on our return, she'll be able to strengthen the Parliament commitment to observing and progressing Fiji's stand on this UNCR 1325. So it's a great pleasure for me to be here as guest speaker and to witness the launch of such a vital information tool, the Annual Policy for Peace Report on the United Nations Security Council Resolution 1325. This report mirrors findings of the Global Study Report and is a result of work implemented since the adoption of the UNSCR 1325 15 years ago. It focuses on a number of recommendations of the global study, particularly the prevention and human security approach through the use of early warning systems, as well as the significance of preemptive dialogue of the local, national, and international level. Subsequently, the report stipulates measures to address long-term issues such as exclusion, inequality, the proliferation of small arms, violent masculinities, and climate change. Quite fundamentally, the report also highlights women's participation as a key pillar for the sustainability of peace. The United Nations Security Council Resolution 1325 on Women, Peace and Security was adopted in October 2000. It is quite significant, as it was the first time ever that the UN Security Council gives specific recognition to gender issues and women's experiences in conflict and post-conflict situations and their contribution to conflict resolution and prevention. The United Nations Security Council Resolution 1325 calls for participation of women in peace processes, gender training in peacekeeping operations, protection of women and girls, respect for their rights, gender mainstreaming in the reporting and implementation, as well as systems of the United Nations relating to conflict, peace, and security. The UNSCR 1325 also recognizes women as agents in building peace and guaranteeing security, and is rooted in the premise that women's presence and participation in the political process, perspectives, and contributions to the substance of negotiations will improve the chances of attaining viable and sustainable peace. This occasion of commemorating the 15th anniversary of the passing of the UNSCR 1325 is a good opportunity to reflect on what has been achieved, what lessons we can learn, and how we can be more effective in securing concrete changes on the ground to prevent violence, protect human rights, and make progress on gender equality. The definition of peace and security continues to evolve, and so is the effort of defining justice. This ever-changing and evolving reality poses major dilemmas for the attainment of the 4 pillars of Security Council Resolution 1325 and its subsequent resolutions, the pillars of participation, protection, peace building, and prevention. It was these areas of concern that formed the basis of the 15-year review Resolution 1325. Fiji is highly regarded in terms of its cultural diversity and upholding racial harmony, in addition to its unwavering effort towards assisting the needy. This has been evident in its vow to serve the United Nations peacekeeping missions. Fijian peacekeepers are taking the risk in war-zone regions around the world, in promoting peace and creating awareness on the advantages of being a state of peace and the disadvantages of being a state of war. Our current constitution is primarily aimed at enabling the attainment of a united Fiji, and has subsequently strengthened the equal recognition of all Fijians under the law and further enhanced the protection and promotion of civil and political rights, together with our social and economic rights. Now every Fijian enjoys equal opportunity and a common identity. Fiji currently has the highest representation of women in parliament, in the Pacific that is, 16%. We have the first female leader of the opposition and 4 women holding portfolios in government, 2 ministers and 2 assistant ministers. Both the Secretary General to Parliament and the Secretary to Cabinet are women, and I am equally honored to be the first female Speaker of our Parliament. Fiji is now experiencing a tremendous shift where women are now holding high posts in both the private sector and academia. And government remains committed to further ensuring a conducive environment for all, especially our women and children in their development and progress. Ladies and gentlemen, the representative role of Parliament is about ensuring that all groups in the society, based on religion, ethnicity, tribes, political affiliation, gender, socio-economic and cultural groups, have the opportunity for meaningful participation and representation in decision-making processes. Parliament's role in this regard is crucial, as it brings together representatives from different interests-based groups to develop a common vision that accommodates the interest of all groups. It is increasingly being recognized that the role of Parliament is moving beyond the traditional legislative oversight and representative function to a broader responsibility in peace building at the regional and international level through encouraging dialogue, building confidence, and facilitating peer-to-peer learning. This is somewhat appropriately reflected in the Policy for Peace 2015 report, which calls on us to move beyond calling for action plan. Parliament also has a role in ensuring that gender equality, gender mainstreaming, and gender equity are given consideration in peace-building processes. It is able to do so by being representative, passing gender-responsive legislation, and budgeting, and ensuring that policy implementation meets both the needs of men and women equally. Through their participation in regional and international parliamentary associations, parliaments tend to have an impact in the implementation of regional and international issues. These forums promote dialogue among different parliamentarians from different countries, and they serve as a model for a conflict prevention and peace building, especially for issues that cross international borders. While it's only part of the solution to ensure greater participation of women in Parliament, it is equally important that the capacities of women members of Parliament are built to be able to influence policy making and for all to understand the importance of greater parity for men and women in society. Special acknowledgement ought to be rendered to those that actively and continuously pursue the implementation of this mammoth task. It is at this juncture that I wish to commend the efforts by FemLink Pacific in its dedication for the past 15 years in promoting and advocating the localization of UNSCR 1325, including interpreting the Security Council resolutions to our Pacific Island partners such as Tonga, Solomon Islands, Papua New Guinea, and Vanuatu. The attainment of this milestone is a true reflection of commitment by all concerned parties. My appreciation extends to the other UN partners for their invaluable contributions. There is no doubt that we are challenged and share the same position in this report. It is imperative to note, however, that the implementation recommendations stipulated in this report requires participatory and partnership approach, hence the need for effective collaboration and network. And I would like to acknowledge the contributions of the UN Women in the whole process, and we thank you. With these few words, I now officially launch the Policy for Peace 2015 report.
Madam Speaker, thank you very much for making time in your very busy schedule. And just as a little bit of background, as it's already been highlighted, there's a very key role for us in the role of parliamentarians, as we've discussed over time and as you've also highlighted today. And so that's really important for us to see how in the next stage of the implementation of this Security Council resolution at the national level, not just in Fiji but with our other Pacific Island partners, we can see the realization of the essence of the resolution, particularly in terms of participation, active participation in prevention, in the processes of Parliament, and how we can work better as civil society with our UN partners. So thank you also, UN Women. There's an array of publications in front of us that represent the series that we have been producing for a number of years called Policy for Peace. That has really come out of our work in the media. That we started as a media organization working with our partners in Bougainville, in Solomons, in Tonga initially, as women who came together in response of conflicts in our countries. We have seen that women in Bougainville and Solomons help negotiate in terms of building peace after their crises. But as Nicola said, we don't then see them in the peace negotiations, in the signing of the peace agreements. We ourselves emerged from the Blue Ribbon Peace Vigil in Fiji, and then that was when we picked up on the Security Council resolution as it was adopted in 2000. But it's also a very important legacy of Pacific women's work from the very early days of the anti-nuclear movement, the demilitarization movement, the activism of those women. So we see this as a continuation of that legacy. So I'm just pleased to say that we will be heading to the Security Council next week to be part of the open debate, to participate in the launch of the global study, and FemLink will be taking 2 young women across. So it's great that we have the kind of development agency support to have young women also participate, because the future of peace and security in our region is not just about those of us in leadership now, but the young women's leadership as well, and how they can be part of understanding how these structures work and how they can bring it back home to Fiji and the Pacific as well. So if not me hounding, then definitely a couple more young women from FemLink Pacific will be on the track of implementing 1325. So thank you once again to you, Madam Speaker, to UN Women also for this partnership, and of course all the other partners that have played an important role in the last 15 years of enabling us to not just talk about 1325 but really localize it as well.